I know we've only known each other for 4 weeks and 3 days, but to me, it seems like 9 weeks and 5 days.
All right, everybody. Let's get growing. Welcome, everybody, all my passionate plant people and garden enthusiasts, to our Sunday edition of the Let's Get Growing show. Today is the third Sunday of the month, and that means it is our gardening book club edition of the show, and we will have our good friend Marc Boucher joining with us here in just a little bit, not only for our In the Garden segment, but as our co-host for our monthly book club here too. So we'll have him joining us here in just a few minutes. And our feature for today's show is Karen Hugg, author of Leave Your Troubles Behind. Man, this book is really great. We had Karen on last year on the show, and thought that would be great when we were doing our gardening book club to have her back on to feature her book, because I think it's just a wonderful book. And so we'll be talking all about that coming up here in just a little bit on the show as well too. So again, great to have all of you here join with me. We're running just a little bit late, and sorry again too for all of you who are also joining with us today, who tried to join the show yesterday. Yesterday was just the craziest thing, and I suppose it was bound to happen eventually at some point in time. But I was coming out, getting ready to get everything started up to get the show going, and I actually got a couple of things started. Went outside to go snap a couple of pictures, and came back inside, and the power was out. In fact, the whole area around us was out. The power was gone, and it was gone for a couple of hours, so I wasn't able to do the show yesterday. And we had planned to have on the show our good friend John Kohler from Growing Your Greens. I did an interview with him just a little bit earlier in the week, and so I was going to play that off for you yesterday. We'll just have to postpone that till next week. We just jostle a few things around, and then we'll get that in and talk with John Kohler next week on the show as well too. So again, that's just kind of the way things go. The craziest thing about the whole situation was that we had all been kind of planning for this storm system to kind of move through the area. I mean, I think they were talking about it the day before or so. So we were kind of planning on some thunderstorms and all of that sort of stuff. So it was kind of we had an idea that that's what would be happening later in the afternoon, but wouldn't you know it, the power goes out without any storm at all, and then the power comes back on, and then the storm shows up. And then the crazy thing too is that later in the evening, after the storm was over, the power goes out again. So the power didn't go out during the storm at all. It went out before and after the storm. So that was kind of a whole crazy part of the situation too. But unfortunately, we weren't able to have our show yesterday, but we'll catch up with everything next Saturday. So that'll be awesome to do that and have you all join with me then for our talk with John Kohler. If you are joining with us right now, though, be sure to click that thumbs up, hit the like button, and also subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Hit the bell notification too, so you'll be notified of our upcoming videos and live streams. Plus, share with all your friends and all your garden friends out there. Let them know about the Let's Get Growing show here on the Urban Gardener channel every Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern, each and every weekend, unless the power goes out. All right. And a big, huge shout out to all of you who are watching our show on the replay right now. I know a lot of you can't watch us when we're live here on the channel live. So it's great that YouTube allows us to watch all of these live streams as replays. So thank you all to you who are watching us on the replay, and definitely be sure to get down below into the comments section and let me know that you're here. Let me know what you got growing on. I want to hear all about it. I want to hear what's growing on in your gardens. What's you got any questions, or if you got any any sort of thoughts, or maybe even one of the things I love to hear from people is who might you like to see on the show. We have lots of really wonderful, awesome guests joining with us each and every weekend on the show. And maybe there's someone you watch or follow out there in the gardening world and you'd like to see them on the Let's Get Growing show. So definitely send me some suggestions for some possible guests that we could have on the show too. I always love hearing about that. And if you are here with us live right now, you know the deal. Definitely get into the chat box there, join the conversation with everybody else. If you have any questions or comments, definitely drop those in there too, and we might just feature them on the show. Definitely. So let's see, who do we got joining with us here today on the show? All right, and for sure, definitely right away we want to welcome our facilitator, Jay Dixon, joining us from Ontario, Canada. Jay does an awesome job facilitating the show and helping everybody along with the conversation in our chat by dropping in some awesome links as well too during the conversations, and giving you further information about some of the subjects that we're talking about here on the show. And then, of course, we got joined with us nice and early, and as I like to say all the time, from the future, down and under in Australia. We got our good friend Rick joining with us here too. Rick, great to see you. Thank you for joining with us again this week. And of course, Serena joining us in the chat. Great to see you, Serena. Awesome. Let's see here. Oh, and Jersey Girl, great to see you too. Great. Oh, and then our moderator as well, Adam Burley, joining with us in the conversation too. Great to see you, Adam. How was that storm for you? That was pretty wild yesterday. Knocked us completely out of contention here on our show. So Adam's just right up the road for us. He said, what does he say? The power here in Central Point goes out for a few hours, at least once a month, if not more. It's frustrating. Yikes. I know. I can't imagine that. And ours does. I mean, it a few times it just kind of goes out. I'll come home and notice the clocks are blinking, and oh, yep, the power went out at some point in time. Let's see here. All right. Oh, and we got Grows in Alaska. Good morning from Alaska. Good to see you. Thanks for joining with us. Awesome to have all of you here with us today. Again, like I said, we've got a really great show for you today. I'm really excited about our book of the month selection this month. Karen Hugh's joining with us here in just a little bit to talk all about that. And then here in just a minute or two, we'll be joined with our good friend Marc Boucher-Colbert, talk a little bit about what's growing on in the garden. How's things been growing on in your garden? We usually talk a little bit about what I've got growing on. In fact, I was going to yesterday show you all kind of a cool little picture slideshow. That's where I was out going snapping some pictures last minute before I was getting the show started yesterday and the power went out. But we'll talk a little bit about more of that next week and all of that too as well. But we've got lots and lots of things growing on out there. In fact, I'm really surprised about our tomatoes, and surprised in a good way though too, because I've got tons of them out there. We've got a lot of great fruits. Some of the varieties we've chosen to put into the garden this year have really kind of worked out throughout our heat, because that's been our issue over the last couple of years, not being able to really get very much production off of some of the tomatoes we'd been growing in the garden. And plus, I like to try all sorts of different heirlooms and different varieties each and every year. But that became a problem as the heat started getting more and more intense for us over the last couple of years. So I've gone to growing some more heat tolerant varieties of tomatoes. And that's really starting to pay off this summer now too, because we've just gone through some really good heat waves here in Southern Oregon. And we've got actually some pretty good amounts of tomatoes growing off of all of our plants. Plus, the temperature's kind of gone down just a little bit for us as well, too, here in the Northwest and down in, especially here in Southern Oregon, where it does get pretty hot for us down here. But it's actually cooled down just a bit. And as I can see in the forecast, which is perfect, we're like in perfect tomato growing weather. And over this last week, too, I've been noticing and seeing the plants just starting to produce a ton more flowers, which means we're right on course to do some nice production right here in our kind of fall growing part of the season, the after the heat wave type of season for our tomato growing. So I'm looking forward to that too, because there's a ton of flowers out there. So really great Let's see here. Okay. Let's see. Oh, Adam says that I was excited about the light. Was excited about the lightning, but welcomed wasn't it probably was I wasn't excited about the lightning, but welcomed all the rain we got. Yeah, yeah. We don't look forward to lightning much. I'm sure that's what he meant to say there, but because that means we've got dry conditions all around us, and wildfires can be a real big problem when we're seeing lightning strikes like that. But man, that rain that came down yesterday was unbelievable and really welcome to like Adam says, man, we got a great washing. And as I was walking around just before the show today, just checking things out after all of that happened yesterday, and all the plants are just looking great. That just a rain just does wonders for plants, and they're all out there just looking greener than they've ever been right now. So they really enjoyed all of that rain as well too. So it was really great to kind of get that right now, and especially like I said, coming out of all those heat waves, man, that was really welcome. So again, lots of great things growing on out there. I'll show you again. We'll continue on. I was going to continue that idea of doing kind of a picture slideshow to kind of give you guys a little bit of a tour of what's all growing on out there in the garden. I haven't had much of a chance to get out and do much of a video type of thing for the channel lately. So I thought it'd be fun for us to all kind of do a little picture tour. And I'll do that again. Like I said, this next Saturday, we'll take a look out there and check out all the great things that are growing, all the tomatoes and peppers and melons and pumpkins and squash. And man, we got all sorts of things out there that are just really growing great. So it'd be really awesome to catch up with that here real soon too. All right, everybody, let's see here. I wanted to also mention to everybody real quick here before we get moving along too, if you are joining with us here on the show right now, to get down into the description below, and there is a link to our Facebook group. It is the Let's Get Growing Gardening Group, and this is a great gardening group for all of us here in the Let's Get Growing community, and all of us is where we can kind of take our conversation here on the show and take it to our group and be able to continue the conversation there, as well as sharing all of your gardens and pictures and all of that. Because I was just showing you guys all of the kind of pictures of things growing on in my garden that I've got here, and I love to do that, and I'm going to do that for all of you, but I love to see everything that you all are growing too as well. And our Facebook group is a great opportunity for you to get a chance to go out and snap some pictures of your garden and share with me all the things that you've got growing on as well too, because I love seeing all the things that everybody has growing on in their gardens. All right, everybody, let's get moving along here today. We've got a great show for you. Like I said, we've got Karen Hugg joining with us here in just a few minutes, but each and every Sunday, we like to get together with our good friend, Marc Boucher-Colbert. And Marc joins with us each week to talk a little bit about what's growing on in the garden. All right, Marc. How are we doing today?
Welcome back. Here we are again. Another spin of the wheel here.
Excellent. I know. It's really awesome. What is this again? This is our 5th now monthly gardening book club.
Yeah, we're on number 5, and I was thinking as you were talking about all that lightning, I was thinking, well, lightning's going to strike today, but nobody's going to have to worry about it because it's just going to be like the brilliance of this great book that we're reading.
That's all. Exactly. I love it. That's great.
No forest fires, but it could ignite a fire in somebody's heart, so that's good. Let's hope.
Yeah. Well, let's work for that goal for sure. Absolutely. We're all for that sort of thing for sure. But yeah, definitely we got a great book to talk about here just a little bit here. We got Karen with us, joining with us in just a few minutes, and we're going to dig right into all of that again. But let's see here. We get you here each and every Sunday, talk a little bit, give us maybe a little bit of a lesson from the garden, all that sort of stuff. And when we get you here live, we get a great opportunity to talk about all the different gardens and different things that you've got growing on. You got different garden spaces. But one of the things that you have too, and we've touched on it, I think at the beginning of the year when we were first getting started for the year on the show, but you have and did this year and created this just really awesome card deck
Yep.
for garden design and thinking about garden design. This is called the Design Your Eden card deck. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about that today. I've got you here live. I wanted to maybe, kind of dig into this just a little bit more, especially for some of those viewers and listeners out there who haven't had necessarily a chance to check this out or see this Design Your Eden card deck. You want to, for those who haven't actually heard about it, you want to let everybody know just a little bit more about it?
Sure. Let me break it down real quick, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit about creating a mission statement for your garden, because that's
I want to get to
been
that
coming
for
up.
sure.
And I read an article in the New York Times gardening section recently about that, creating a mission statement for your garden. And we're going to hear about it again today because it's in Karen's book about more like a mission statement for your green personality. But this idea of mission statement, how you create a focal statement for especially for your outdoor space. That's what we're concerned with, right? Your yard or your garden. Now's a great time to be doing that too, because you're out there, you're experiencing it, and maybe you have some ideas about how you want to improve it. All right. Well, what is the deck about? Well, it's cards, but they're not playing cards. I mean, they're in the shape of a poker or a poker sized card, but there's 3 suits per se. We got the element suits, and that's just things you would find in your yard or garden. Let's just go through these. We got planting bed. Maybe you got lawn games out there. You might have a little bit of a stair if you're going up or down. Hanging baskets. You can see some of these are oriented toward food growing, plant growing. Some are just hardscape things, an eco roof, sandbox, some play, shed, storage. Okay, that gives you an idea. I got 100 of those. 100. It's kind of like the basic vocabulary, the ABCs of the garden. Next suit is the value suit. This kind of gets at something a little deeper. The whole idea of creating some kind of a statement is for your garden is we're all oriented toward the elements and especially toward the plants. So it's real easy to get impulsive. Like you're at a nursery, it's like, boom, I see that thing. I got to get it. I want to put that in the garden. Or, oh, that's a cool bench. I'm going to grab that. Or, oh, look at that reflecting sculpture thing. I'm going to get that. So it's easy to get a little caught up in the elements of the garden or the yard, the things that make it up. But it's a little harder to kind of do some reflection on the values. What in the world is behind your garden? Like here's a couple. I always have to go contrary to my natural instinct because the camera, it's like, I want to move this way, but it's like, whoop, no, I got to move that way. Native, maybe you want to design around natives support, with native plants or supporting natives. Maybe you want a garden that's all seasons that somehow reflects the seasons or that you can enjoy in all seasons. Maybe you want a garden for contemplation. Maybe you want a garden that either emotionally runs warm in terms of, maybe that means like a color palette to you, or maybe it's just actually like, I would like to be warm in my garden and to sit in my garden and feel warm. So how can I do that? What's going to help me do that? So, these are the kind of a deeper level of reflection with the values, and it just starts to orient your decision making a little bit more with these elements. There's also a couple other there's one other suit called the connectors. Get those out of the box here. The connector cards, that's its own. Oh gosh, I'm not. My brain is wired to do the exact opposite of what I need to do. The connector cards. So some of them are just like positional words that help you kind of just examine what are the relationships of some of the things in your garden. And maybe they suggest different ways of relating things. And then there's one magic card. I call it the golden ticket card. It's called the Seen As card. There's only one of these in the deck. And this helps us imagine common garden elements from the point of view of values. Yeah. So, all right, let's talk about why garden design isn't normally done through cards. So why do it through cards? Well, first of all, cards are fun, right? There's an element of play here. This is a garden design tool, but a lot of people think it's a game. Hopefully maybe I'll find a way to make it a game someday, but right now it's a garden design tool, but it immediately suggests play. It's like I've got cards in my hand, I'm playing, right? So there's
Mm-hmm.
that sort of lightness and experimentation.
Yep.
There, it's tactile. You can move these things around. They're not just ideas somewhere vaguely in your head. It's like if you're interested in a shed, you got the shed card out on the table. You and your, whoever lives with you, your partner, your housemates, whatever, we can all talk about the shed because there it is. We can move the shed around with respect to other cards. It's very tactile, very engaging in that way. And then when you start, here's the mission statement thing. Here's how we work with the mission statement. So when we start to take values cards and element cards, you can start to combine these like you would. My analogy for this is the refrigerator magnet poetry. So, how many people would say that they're poets? Probably not very many. We all kind of shrink back. I'm not a poet. I'm not a poet. But if you put somebody in front of a refrigerator with all those little magnets, you know what they're going to do? They're going to write a poem because it's all right there in front of them. And it's kind of fun. It's like, it might not be the greatest poem in the world, but you're going to write a little poem because it's right there for you.
Exactly.
So, looking at this, if you wanted contemplation and you wanted a shed in your garden, it's like, how could you work that into some kind of mission statement? Could the shed help you achieve the goal of the contemplation? Would there be a little sitting space in there? And, could you weave that into a little sentence where maybe you added a few other elements or a few other values, and it started to form a sentence, which basically is a mission statement for your garden. Then you can, print that out, look at it, write it, and then put it in your wallet. And when you go to the nursery, you just pull out your mission statement and be like, does this new rare pine tree fit my mission? No, okay, it doesn't. All right, I'm not getting it then. So it helps you make decisions and it helps you stay on task, on purpose, on what you said your intention was.
Exactly.
Anyway, that's just kind of one of the ways. And you can read all about this on the web. There, www.designyoureden. There's an activity called your Eden's Manifesto, and that's what I mean by the mission statement. So if you're interested, but it's been a fun way. It's been really fun journey with these cards, and it continues to unfold. And I love them. I love using them for myself. I use them with my kids at school. I teach gardening at a Franciscan Montessori Earth School. So we do activities with these. It's a great way to get everybody involved because it's tactile. You just immediately start touching and working with it, and you're designing. You are designing. Just
Yeah, I think it brings a really kind of, in a way, maybe like you said, not necessarily game, but there's activities, there's things and ways you can work with these cards in order to, in the long run, explore maybe more creative avenues, because maybe, and here's the thing, maybe I don't necessarily find myself to be that kind of creative of a person, in some senses. So when I look at like a big blank space of what I could do, my mind kind of goes, I don't know what to think of now, because there's so many possibilities. There's all this sort of stuff. And I can't even really think of most. So here you get a chance to kind of step back a little bit, take a look at these cards, kind of look at the frames of initial things you're thinking about, use those as your elements and all of that. And then those values you can bring to it. And then what starts to happen is that you start to see things a little bit differently, and you start to create things based on just these little, what are they? Just kind of like words and things that just kind of trigger ideas and thoughts. And then, and so what it really does, I think it does. And even for people who are creative, ultimately too, I think it really can almost just kind of really expand that exploration that you're able to take in that space. You know what I mean? So I think the cards are really, really awesome because it really does take our thought about spaces in our garden and to a different place that we weren't thinking originally when we first started thinking about those spaces. And again, too, like you said about, and I thought that was just such the perfect analogy about the refrigerator magnets. You know what I mean? Is again, you might not be a creative person. You might have this space, and then all of a sudden you start playing with these cards, you start doing some of these activities, and now all of a sudden some of these ideas start to happen. And now now you feel like you're a poet, right? Now you feel like you're a garden designer because you've actually been able to come up with some, because you've been prompted by these different cards and these different things that are. And I think this is just a really wonderful idea. And again, too, I just remember, because I've known you for years now, and I
Yeah.
remember you talking about this years ago, and I think it's just so awesome to see from that idea that you were talking about years ago to being something that all of us can go out right now and get and be able to utilize for our own ideas and exploration. And even for garden professionals out there too, I think this is
Oh
a
yeah.
great thing as well
Yes.
too. Like I
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. Well, here's kind of how they started.
Yeah.
Just
Just
blanks. And
yep.
I was doing Sharpie markers and blanks, so it's like
Yep. Yep.
you play with an idea, and I'm sure all of us are doing this in our gardens in various ways. You just start at a very basic level. It's like, I have this thought, maybe I could take this a little further. What's the cheapest or least intensive way I can get into this? And then you jump in, you take one little step. First it literally was like index cards. And then I went and bought myself some blank poker cards, just playing cards, because I was like, I think I want to be able to shuffle these. I think I want them to feel more like cards. And Sharpie, and then I started making little decorations during the pandemic when I had a lot of time. It's like,
and now look at it. I mean, this is for real. This is a great, awesome deck of cards. Everything. It's all just, it's amazing, Mark. And really, for everybody out there, if you do want to get one of your own decks as well too, there is a link down below in the description so that you can check out the Design Your Eden Garden deck. So again, here, and we got a couple minutes left here in the segment. Let's talk a little bit more about that mission statement though too.
Well, yeah, like I said, so when I hear gardening and mission statement together, I am a little off put, because it's kind of like you think, oh, come on, I just want to go out and relax in my garden. I just kind of want to have the downtime. I don't want to have to create this whole project for myself. Like, oh, I got to write a mission statement. But, you can phrase that however you like it. A vision statement, keep me on track statement, tie my hands behind my back at the nursery statement. Whatever it is. I mean, we've all had the experience of impulse buying, right? I mean, it's just like you don't know you want something until you see it. And then that's when the trouble sets in, because the urge is so strong. So the garden mission statement is just a way that you say, at a quiet, reflective moment, this is what I actually want my garden to be doing for me. This is what I'm hoping for. And like I said, now's a great time to do that, because you're in the garden, you're out there, you're thinking about it. You may have ideas like, gosh, it would be cool if I just added this, or it's like, I like hand watering, but gosh, it'd be so much easier if I just I'd be more consistent if I had a drip irrigation system. So right now you're kind of right in the feel of it, and you can just make some notes, even if it's just a wish list or a what's working, what's not working list. So it doesn't have to be as formal as a mission statement. It's not like you're going to go be a corporation or something and come up with your logo next. It's like,
right.
You don't need to be branded and all that sort of stuff. But it's a way of focusing your efforts and your energies, and then it helps you make decisions later on. Because gardening, it's a bunch of cash. Oh man, like for the seed catalog, this is when I really need it, because I look at that seed catalog and I want to grow every freaking thing in it.
Everything.
And I have so
I'm almost afraid of the seed catalogs when I see them show up now.
I buy them.
At least my wallet starts running.
I have a lot of ungrown seeds in my basement. It's like like the long Thai beans or something. It's like, that looks so awesome. Did I ever put them in this year? Nope. So if I had a little mission statement telling me, listen, dummy, you like cukes, tomatoes, and lettuce, just grow a bunch of that stuff, and beans. That's it. You're limited to that.
Get some beans too.
That would be a great mission statement. Then, when I read the seed catalog, I'd be like, this is cool for somebody else. It's not for me.
Exactly. Huh. We all have different ways we need to be looking at things, or have different ways we're looking at that perspective. And like you said, right now it's a great time because there are things. We're in the middle of this
Yeah.
garden year right now, middle of what we're doing now. So we can
Mm-hmm.
see again too what it is we might be wanting to look towards for our next garden, and what we're looking towards for the next year. So working on those sort of ideas now and creating that mission for your next garden is really a great idea. And I think, it's a good way to really just, get us centered in what we're doing for our garden, and what our, what we're trying to accomplish.
I mean, everybody knows next year's garden is always going to be the best garden, right? This is like, so whatever you're saying about next year, it's like, yeah. Oh yeah, next year it's going to be like this. Oh, get that down right now. Write that down. So when you come to uh, January, December, when you're snowed in or rained in or whatever the case is, you can actually start putting that into. It's like, all right, well, if I really want to do that, or if my August self was telling me that I should do this, then how do I make a plan to do it? What's it going to cost? What's it going to take, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, right on, right on. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Again, get a mission statement for your garden. Go and work out some of those ideas that you have as well too through the Design Your Eden card deck. And again, like I said too, go down in the description below. You'll find a link for the Design Your Eden card deck. And again, man, thanks for joining with me here to talk about that sort of thing, and to be my co-host as we're going to get moving here along here on the show.
Away, Nick. We're on to something bigger and better now.
That's right. So here we'll be right back here in just a minute, and we will get started here to talk all about Leave Your Troubles Behind by Karen Hugg.
Yep.
Hey gardeners, thanks for tuning in to our show today. We'll be right back at it here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a second here to highlight our regular videos and features here on the Urban Gardener channel. Our weekly garden journals, and our incredible feature visits. All right. Hey there, Mark. We are all set now to get started with our monthly gardening book club. And this month we are talking about Leave Your Troubles Behind by author Karen Hugg. All right, Mark. You got a review copy.
I got the cheap copy from Amazon.
Oh no.
But it's awesome. It's perfect. But it's like, all right. Sorry, I didn't. Yeah, I should have probably done like this.
Oh, that's right. All right. Anyways, what a great book. Leave Your Troubles Behind. One of these things, I last year, as I was getting started for doing this show and all of that, I was a part of this other podcast community, and they were. I remember one of the groups that I followed there. They were talking about and mentioned this book on the podcast as well too. So I went out and got the book and read it, and man, it just talked and spoke to a lot of what my kind of mission with getting people and having conversations and telling garden stories, and a lot of that was to kind of talk about what we get, how our gardens make us feel, You know what I mean? In a way,
Yeah.
this is something I hear about from a lot of people, is that what they get from the garden more so than, if we're food gardeners getting food, or flowers is the beauty and all this sort of stuff, and that in all of that is kind of what we get, kind of a relief,
Yeah.
relief from, a lot of like the world and our life and all that sort of stuff. And again, too, this book was just really calling to me, and in those sort of feelings that I felt too about that sort of stuff. How did you what did you think, especially, kind of now, and in with all the kind of that, the troubles in the world and all that sort of stuff? How did
Mhm.
you feel and think when you were reading this book?
Well, before I say that, I have to say that you're a pretty darn good example of it, because you got so many leaves surrounding you. You've re-leafed your life pretty nicely in that space. So you're definitely hitting
Yeah.
it out of the park on the indoor plant thing, Enoch. I got to give you a compliment there.
Or is it,
Um,
or is it a sign of the stress I go through in life?
exactly right.
Yeah.
That we'll leave that to the audience to figure out. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, I really found this book to be equal parts gardening and social commentary. It's just like addressing
Yeah.
how difficult life is right now and I'm not just talking like pandemic or post-pandemic. I'm talking
Yeah. Yeah.
modern, just
Hmm.
modern life. The things, the the ways we've progressed, and with technology and communication, and the expectations we have for our lives and for our work productivity and all that stuff, it's just gotten to a level that's, well, we all know it's very out of hand. I mean, it's threatening our whole planet, et cetera, et cetera. But each of us as individuals still needs to live in that system, right? We
Hmm.
function in that system, and we're trying, as gardeners especially, we're trying to find our niches to create little eddies in the system where we can exist and not be so overwhelmed by it. But
Yeah.
it is just speaking to all of that in a, I mean, one, she's a great writer, so super big compliment in terms of this book. The clarity, the research is so much on happiness, so much on what connects us socially. So it just, even if you weren't a gardener and you read this book, you'd be like, I get how, I mean, I have an idea of like how I need to navigate this society. I need to be learning, I need to be experiencing with my senses, I need to be finding ways to be playful and idle, I need to connect with others, exercise, et cetera,
Hmm.
et cetera. So she just names the great things, the things that for us as human beings. And of course, it all does go back to the plant world and nature world, because that is the world we belong to. That's where we come from. That's what it's all about,
Yeah.
right?
That's so
We are
true.
these
Yeah.
creatures.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. All right. Well, enough of our review of all of this.
Yeah, right.
Let's welcome right to this show, talk all about it, author Karen Hugg, joining
Thank
with
you.
us here on Let's Get Growing.
Hi,
Thank,
guys.
thank you so much, Karen, for joining with us today and coming back on this show as well, too. It was really awesome to talk to you last year, but when we
Yeah.
came up with the idea to do a gardening book club, I was like, oh man, I got to get Karen back on, because we got to feature this book, because again, like I said, this book really just kind of came in at the right time for me, and really just love it. I love the perspective. I love the research in here,
Mm.
bit about that sort of stuff. And again, like Mark said, just some amazing writing and putting together a lot of thoughts about the natural world and kind of stress and relief. So again, tell us a little bit more first, maybe about yourself, your background a little bit, and and then we'll dig a little bit more into this book.
Hmm.
Yeah, sure. Can you guys can hear me okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Great.
Yeah, I was well, I was in tech, which is what I talk about in the book. I worked
Mhm.
for, let's say, a large online retailer that you've probably heard of. And I was burnt out, and I ended up leaving that job, and I ended up going to horticulture school because I had always been interested in plants. And it was funny because when I came home from work, I had like just 1,000 thoughts in my head every day, and 1,000
Mm.
emails in my inbox. And I was
Mhm.
completely overwhelmed and completely burnt out. And I would read gardening magazines and gardening books and
Yeah.
gardening catalogs. And it
Mm.
really was a balm for me. And it wasn't
Yeah.
until, so anyway, I ended up going to horticulture school just kind of on a whim, like maybe I'll learn a little bit about plants. And I completely fell in love with plants and learned to respect them. Like they're so plants are so delicate and yet so resilient that I just fell in love. And so that's when I really became a professional and straight out of the gate started designing. I started designing gardens and working on the gardens for the people that I had worked with.
Yeah.
So,
excellent.
I was kind of, bringing that feeling that I had to them by helping them, have a nice sanctuary. And so I did that for many years. And then the pandemic hit, and a friend of mine who was like a developmental book editor said, "Hey, I'm going to go through this book coaching program. Do you want to write that book about plants and mental health you've always been thinking about?" And I thought, well, I guess so. I have nothing else to do because it's the pandemic. And we started working on the book, and she helped me really flesh it out and really kind of took me to task in terms of like, what is it you're trying to say? And what do you want the world to know about plants, and et cetera. So that's kind of been my journey with it. So, yeah.
So I'm curious about how people have responded to this book, because it's definitely it's not provocative in the tone or anything like that, but I imagine it brings up a lot of feelings for people about their lives, because they're feeling the stress, they're feeling the anxiety, they're feeling the overwhelm, the burnout, all that stuff, and you're offering them very gently another path. But what are people saying, or how are they responding?
Well, from I guess my own interactions with people, I get a lot of, that first chapter you wrote, that's how I feel right now, where I talked about being overwhelmed and stressed out and being in front of a screen a lot and being indoors a lot. People really feel like that's them. And the response generally has been positive. It's not really a bestseller. It's not really like a blockbuster, but hopefully we can get out there and make it a little bit more exposed,
exactly.
Get the word out about it, because and one thing that my friend brought up was how people don't know that they are disconnected from nature and that nature could actually help them. Like people don't even know that, they don't realize that could be a thing. And I know that, and you guys probably know that, but, and any gardener, who loves plants knows that, but a lot of people in the general population, I don't think know that, because we've just gotten so far away from nature in our daily lives. We're not like a nation of farmers in the way that we used to be, and that type of thing. So, So.
Yeah, definitely. And for me too, I didn't necessarily have a job where it was a screen necessarily, but it was still a job, you know what I mean? And it's still that sort of stress and that sort of thing. And years with a company. I worked for a company for over 20 years. And it was just, a part of some of the things that was going on with me in my life, and other things too. A lot for me though too then was also personal life. I had some things and issues happening in my life, some loss of close family member, and things like that. And I found myself in the garden, more and more. I was just tinkering around with things to kind of start with, kind of just as a thing to do. But then I just found myself kind of consumed in love and doing all this sort of stuff. But then after a while, I started looking back and going, why, what was this? And then when I was reading this book, and I was just kind of like, it really kind of tuned in for me, going, oh, I get it now. This is kind of what was happening for me. It was I was finding and searching for some sort of relief from all of this sort of stuff, and I found it in my garden. And so again, that's why I kind of talk about how it really speaks to me a lot, because that's really how I found just the growth of my passion for gardening came through a lot of my working things out.
Yeah, that's fascinating. When and I found that not just in having a tech job, but then later in my life, we, my husband and I, without really knowing what we were getting into, we adopted 3 kids,
Mm.
and
Oh, yeah.
they all came home at the same time. They were siblings. Now they're all in college pretty much,
Wow.
and but at the time our life was chaos and it was incredibly stressful. And I would go out into the garden, and
Mm.
that was like my husband would take them all, load them up in the car, take them to the playground on a Saturday morning for a couple hours, and I got to garden. And
Mm.
that was so restorative. It saved me, right? And
Mhm.
then even during the pandemic, um, my sister got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And not to get too intense, but
Right.
she was dying. And it was incredibly difficult. And I was writing this book while that was happening. And,
Wow.
I would go in the garden and just, you know, that's what
Mhm.
kept me going.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. Yep.
Wow.
So,
I know
it's kind of like, it's almost like animals where it's like no
yeah.
matter what you're going through in life, your dog is always there, or
Yeah.
your cat, they
Yeah.
Mhm.
always love you. It's
Yeah.
kind of like the garden is like that to me. It's like
Mm.
the garden will always be there. It'll always be honest. It'll always be true. It'll always be pure for you, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I get what you're saying, I mean,
Mhm.
it's very healing more than we realize. So yeah, I
Yeah.
wanted to write a book to give people practical to gather the research,
Yeah.
because that was another thing. You hear about like forest bathing helps fight cancer and all of
Yeah.
these
Mhm.
studies. And those kept coming across like social media and stuff like that. And I was
Yeah.
like, is there any book that compiles this,
Right.
Mm.
compiles all the studies? And there have been a few, but
Mhm.
not recently. And so I
Yeah,
wanted
yeah.
to get all the research together in one place to see how convincing it was and what was out there. And I was overwhelmed by how much
Mhm.
research was out there.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, and from all around the world. Um, and then the other thing I wanted to do was to give practical advice to people.
Yeah,
Activities like
exactly.
ways to get out there and literally do it in fun ways
Yes.
and no pressure
Mhm.
ways
Yeah.
and
Because
inexpensive ways,
and I think that's an incredible value because it's when we're in sort of mental funks that we can't find ways out sometimes, and you just
Mm.
need something simple, a simple little activity maybe to just get you moving in that right direction, you know? And I was saying I really, really appreciate you sharing so openly with us too. That's just really, really awesome, because I mean, that just really, again, brings me what you were saying there just brings me back because that was exactly my thing. I don't know how many times I spent bawling my eyes out in my garden space.
Mm.
At the
Yeah.
time, our close family member was my daughter's mother,
Mm,
and something so close to us. And I just, and so many times, just exploring my own spirituality, even through plants
mhm.
Mm.
and through this garden space that,
Mm.
it gave back to me so much. And it was just amazing. And again, too, I think, again, brings me back to the book and what that how it kind of spoke to me, that sort of thing of why, and understanding what all of that was happening for me too, because you brought it well together through all of this research. And that's what I want to say. It's just
Yeah.
really, I mean, just an amazingly researched book. Mark and I talked about this actually just the other day as we were talking about what we were going to talk about today too. And I was just like, wow, I mean, I can't believe it. I mean, all the research, there's so many different quotes of something, and some different thing that's happened that relates to something and all of that. And I just wanted to ask you about like the research when it comes to this is like, I know a lot of people talk about how wild it is to write a book, but after I read this, I was like, man, she must have really had a
Yeah.
great experience putting this together.
I did. I mean, my desk was a mess for months because I just had printouts of studies and the books and going to the library all the time and, buying books and just reading everything I could possibly, get my hands on. And then when you go down a rabbit hole, of course, it just gets bigger and deeper
Mm.
and deeper and deeper,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So, and I wanted to be as complete as I could. And also it was exciting. Like it was cool. It was
Mm.
what I was learning and putting together was amazing. And like I said,
Mhm.
and it's not just like in the US. I mean, really, Japan sort of started, Japanese researchers really sort of started this, or not started this, but it's a big, they know this, let's say, in other words, they've done a lot of studies on this. And now the US is catching on, and there's studies in Europe and Scandinavia and Taiwan, Korea, a lot of, it kind of goes around the globe. So the more I researched, the more I was in awe, of what we're finding. And, I should say this, that a lot of the studies are self-reported. The subjects are self-reporting. Okay. But so people, like, for instance, we know that when you look at a bouquet of flowers, your stress, the nervous system, your stress activity goes down by like 25%. So, that's a justification for buying bouquet, and giving flowers to your wife,
right.
if nothing
Right,
else.
exactly.
But
Is your husband listening to this interview?
Yeah, well, he knows. He well knows. He's not a gardener either, necessarily. He'll dig my holes, for plants, but he leaves it up to. He likes to enjoy it, and as he says, he likes to go in and have a cocktail in the backyard and enjoy it. But
right.
he doesn't have the bug, the fever like I have. So but anyway, so it's just amazing. And the other one of the most surprising things that I found out when researching was that plants, like, they did a study, I think it was in Korea, where they put plants in a classroom, and they found that students reported they did better on their exams, and they reported feeling less stress during the exam, and just generally in the classroom. And what they found was, plants don't have to be in your front vision. They can be in your peripheral vision, which is, I thought, really kind of stunning. So there's something unconscious going on, right, with our vision and plants. When you have greenery around you in some way, it lowers your stress. So, and I mean, it makes sense, because then you, like Mark, you had said, like, it's we come home when we go out into nature, because that's where we originated, right, as people. Like,
exactly.
we evolved in nature. And so, like, the human eye is built in some ways to take in fractal patterns. Well, what has fractal patterns? Plants, a tree that, whose branches subdivide and subdivide and subdivide. Like, those natural patterns are harmonious with our vision and kind of how we're built physically. So so the research was really fun to do. And then I kind of was thinking, like, okay, so how is this going to apply to people? What's the method? What can they do, to take all this information? And that's why it's a mix of research activities and stories, because I didn't want it to be just a dry, rundown of the science. I wanted it to be something that people could actually apply to their lives. So,
you struck a very lively balance. One thing that I'm really interested in and you do it in one of the activities. So I'm primarily a garden educator at a Montessori school in Portland, and that sense of, like, what is your first garden memory, and the kind of but in a bigger way, for me, it's like quite a challenge and a mission to lay down something for the kids I'm working with, such that this garden lifestyle, this lifestyle of being outdoors, this just going up to plants and finding snacks on their recess time, that seems normal. That's sort of my underlying mission, like, to normalize that stuff. But it is interesting, it's just like, and you talked about those catalpa trees that were important for you. It's just interesting to try to get back and think about, well, what were the things that really, I thought of a little, once, we didn't have a garden when we grew up. My parents weren't good gardeners, and we had maybe one azalea plant, and that was it in the front yard. Yeah, really bad. They were great at many things, but not gardening. And in my kindergarten, I remember planting we took a milk carton and we halved it, in the old milk, the red and white milk
Yeah.
carton,
Yeah.
cut the top off, punched some holes and put a corn plant. And I do remember very viscerally being fascinated by that plant, just like it was one single corn plant. I'm sure it died shortly after I got it home, but it was like,
Yep.
it was fascinating. So it's like, just to be prompted to ask that question is fascinating, to go deeper into our childhoods and what were our early experiences.
Yeah, yeah, that's that's that chapter I have about the developing your green personality. Like,
Yeah.
if you live in a city and I grew up in Chicago, so I had a similar experience. My mother maybe grew a few tomatoes, but that was really it. And we had a backyard, but that was, kind of it. And so if you grow up in a situation where you aren't exposed to a lot of nature, how do you get that into your life? And like you said, oftentimes it goes back to our childhood. What do we
Yeah.
remember? Do we
Yeah.
remember climbing a tree or growing a little plant in school or planting, cutting roses with our grandmother or, something like that.
Mhm.
And not everybody has those memories. Because I found out when I talked to my husband about it, I said, "So what was yours?" And he said, "I don't think I have one." And I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh,
wow.
that's interesting." And now, no, he grew up on a little farm too. And
Wow.
we talked more, and I said,
Yeah.
"So, did you have anyone in your life who had who liked nature?" And he said, "Oh yeah, my grandmother in California. We used to go down to her house, and she grew grapefruits in the backyard." And he's from He grew up in Bellingham, Washington.
Yeah. Oh,
And so he said we used to go down there, and I couldn't believe that you could just go in the backyard and pick a grapefruit. And my cousin used to
Yeah.
throw them around and bat them around. And I couldn't believe that you could take a fruit and do that. And we used to play on those trees, and all of a sudden,
Mhm.
all the memories, flooded
Wow.
back for him. And I
Yeah.
said, "That's interesting because you're the one person in the house who loves grapefruit the most." And
Wow.
I had never connected that. But he said, "You're right. Like that went back to his childhood." So
What
that's why in the book I had said, in that exercise, I had said, "What is your first memories?" And, I asked some questions to try and get people journaling about it. And then if you don't have the memories, do you know a person who influenced you, who was connected to nature? Because oftentimes that's influential too. And then also, as I said in the book, if you don't have either of those things, what would you do if if money and time and all of that stuff weren't an issue? What would you do with nature? Would you go kayaking? Would you grow tomatoes? Would you have a pretty garden to sit in at night? What would it be? So I think that's really integral to making that connection with nature, is doing a little probing into your past and what you respond to, because everyone's different. And in the book I even talk about, I kind of found that most people are either like explorers, where they like to go out and spend time in nature. We in the Northwest know that that's a really big thing, right? People kayak, people hike, people camp, fish, whatever, etc.
Yep.
And then there's nesters who, like to bring nature to them. Like that's me in a lot of ways. Is I like having a garden. I like having house plants. I like, nesting with my plants. And then there's just greeners generally, I say, which is people who like both. People who would like to go out on a hike, which is also me, and then also grow plants at home. So
I'm a little bit of both, when it comes down to it. I like to get out in it, and I like to bring a lot of it home too, as well. But again, too, I think, like you say, you highlight a really great, kind of like a thought activity there, and as well, there's tons of practical activities. One of my favorites in the book is the idea, and I thought was really great too, on the idea of what Mark was talking about with kids and doing things with kids and things like that, is one of the activities was sending them out to go gather different things, whether it's like little twigs, leaves, flowers, whatever, and then bring them back and then kind of design with them and create and try to do things with them. And then if you have several kids, they can kind of work off of each other or see what each other's doing and all that sort of stuff. I thought that was like a really fun activity, but there's a ton of them in here. What out of all the different activities that you wrote about in your own book is one of your favorites, though?
Oh gosh. Well, one thing I think is really fun is to make those retro frames where we used to have like a whole bunch of little ovals and circles and squares for pictures.
Yeah.
Well, one of my activities is to find your favorite plants in magazines or print them out from the web and make a retro frame of all the plants that you want to grow in your garden or your home.
Oh, that's great.
So I think that activity is kind of fun because I'm a Gen Xer, so it kind of harkens back to my childhood or the 80s, when we had those like funky wooden frames, So I really like that one. Another activity that's not necessarily plant related, but that I talk about in the book is making a gratitude cabinet. Because one of the things, so overall, this book really is about happiness. And like Marc was saying, I found in doing all of my happiness research that there are let's see, maybe 6 different things that researchers find you need. You need to learn or imagine. You need to be experiencing mindfully. You need to be idle and play, and you need to support another life, and it could be plants. You need to unite with like minds. You need to recognize or have gratitude about what you do have, and you need to exercise. And so these are essentially what it comes down to. And in a way, it's no accident that it explains the word leisure, because we work way too hard. And going back to that whole idea of modern life, and we're pushed to work. I have statistics in the book about how Americans don't take their vacation time. And, like in Europe, I worked in Paris for briefly, and those people they're not sacrificing their vacation.
No,
I mean, like that is sacred vacances, it's like it's that vacances, like vacation is sacred there. And so, anyway, getting back to the gratitude cabinet. So that recognizing piece, the gratitude piece, I made a cabinet. I had like a little china cabinet, and I had my grandmother's crystal in there. And I loved my grandmother very much, but I never used this crystal. I mean, like, let's face it, it was just like a relic, and I don't even know if she used it. So I put the crystal away, and I put that cabinet, and it harkens back to a curio cabinet that people used to do like in the 1800s. They used to put all of their fancy, like, favorite things in a cabinet to show off, like kind of like their literacy or their what they were interested in. So anyway, I applied that to the most important things in my life that I'm thankful for. So I put in there my dad died when I was young, when I was a child. And so I put his sunglasses in there. I put a picture of my grandmother in there. I put we spent time in Tucson for a few years, and I put my little Swaro, what do you call it? Little tchotchke in there, So, and I put some books in there. I put everything that I was thankful for in that cabinet. And I walk by it every day, and it reminds me every day of all that I have and all the people in my life who are so special to me. So that's one of I guess those are two of my favorite activities. And then I really recommend people make that gratitude cabinet, because to pass by crystal from, I don't know, the 40s is one thing, but to pass by a picture of my grandmother and these things that are meaningful to me is much more powerful, and it grounds me. It grounds me in my regular everyday life. So, yeah.
Wow. I'd love to dig into the first chapter of the leisure, the learning, the imagination, and the daydreaming. I found that so fascinating in so many ways. One, because it sort of connects with the project Enoch and I are doing. This is like, hey, let's do a monthly book club to keep learning about this thing that we love, right? And to me, it's been so enriching. I mean, all the books have been great, including this one, and it just feels like this, we're expanding as people, as gardeners, et cetera, et cetera. But what I really loved is this sense of imagination that we get so much more sometimes out of imagining things than actually doing them, like a trip, or back to the seed catalog thing. I think sometimes my greatest pleasures in gardening are at the table in January with the seed catalog, because it's like I'm in some semi-altered state, which usually requires forking over a lot of money at the end of the altered state. But it is an intense pleasure, and you're highlighting that really brought it home to me. It's like, yes, many of the pleasures of gardening are the dream state. We dream about the gardens, or we dream about these things we're going to create, and it doesn't always come out that way, but we still get the pleasure by dreaming.
Absolutely, and there's you may have heard about this study. They did a study where they looked at people planning their vacation versus people actually being on their vacation, and they found that people who were planning their vacation were actually in a happier state than when they were on their vacation.
Nothing.
And so, yeah, and so that really is a testament to that dreaming and that planning and that thinking and learning about something and doing. Like planning your garden. And I totally understand that about planning in January. I put that activity, I think it's called something like the garden I'll never have, and where I talk about, I have this image, or I have this dream of this, like a European potager, like it'll be like 4, beds with some herbs and lavender and whatnot, and then a bird bath in the center, and it's got that grit floor, like or ground, that you see on estates in Europe, and have this vision where I would walk out my kitchen and I would have that, perfect garden, and it would be a sunny day, and that's kind of my dream. That's kind of one kind of dream garden that I don't have. But I completely recommend that people do that they make a vision board for the kind of garden that they would love. What do they respond to? Do you see modern things in magazines with grasses? Do you like that? Do you like vegetable gardens? Do you like pretty, European style gardens? Like what is your dream garden? And, because I'm a garden designer, I'm very much into ornamental plants and the art and the beauty of flowers, And so it's so much fun to dream. And then some people dream about, the other day, it's funny you say that, Mark, about the seeds, because the other day I was looking at the whole seed catalog, or I think it's called that. Yep. And they have all these exotic, God. I mean, and I'm like, ooh, striped beets. Yeah, I want to grow those, and I mean, exactly. You can seriously get into trouble. And I can tell you later about my new approach to gardening. But, it's just so much freaking fun to just plan. And whether you do it or don't do it, it doesn't really matter. Like it doesn't, the point is to dream about it and to make yourself happy in the moment.
Yeah, it kind of really kind of goes back in a little bit on what we were talking about in the previous segment too, with Mark, about the mission statement as well too, a little bit, and just kind of creating these visions of what we want to have and what we want to see and everything. I really, and I wrote this down here, and all I wrote was great question, but finding happiness in our garden through growing plants and all of that too. I've always kind of been fascinated with the idea of growing from a seed. And I just want to kind of read from the first paragraph of this chapter here, supporting a little green life, the proud mom of a 7-year-old plant. And you say, one morning in 2021, I came across a post in an online plant group that piqued my interest. A member named Crystal wrote, "Are plants dearer when you start them from seed?" She posted a picture of a snake's head fritillary, or I'll probably get this wrong.
Fritillary, yeah.
Fritillary, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That had taken 7 years to bloom. 7. This got me thinking, was Crystal more attached to this plant because she'd grown it from seed and nurtured it for years rather than more mature potted plant from a nursery? I'd done both approaches and had to admit plants from seeds had a special place in my heart. If we spawn a plant's life from that amazing teeny thing called a seed and foster it for years, does that make us happier than instant gratification?
Mm.
I thought that was just such a great question, right? Because I've always been, whether, I've gotten something from, a full grown plant, which I get, a lot of them. And, as far as our house plants and stuff, or as when I go out to the garden, and more growing our food and everything we do for the year, but starting from seeds. And I think that, I don't know. I mean, I wonder myself too. I mean, because that really, just the caring from the very beginning all
Yeah.
the way to the harvest of the plant, or
Yeah.
again, say you're growing flowers or anything else, just that satisfaction you get from the final part of what you get from the plant. But I just found that question probably just so fascinating, because I think that's something I ponder a lot in the garden. What do
Oh,
you
yeah.
think? What do you think? Because I think maybe there is just a bit more from growing from a seed, but what do you
Oh
think
yeah.
after?
I think so, because what it does is we were talking about pets earlier.
Yeah.
It's kind of like having a pet
Yeah.
or having a child, and you're raising
Yeah.
that child, and you put all of your love and care and hope into that
Mhm.
child or that
Exactly.
pet, and you shape it, and you're responsible. And so when it turns out well, you feel great about it.
Mhm.
Of course, if it doesn't turn out well, you have to say, well, that's okay, I'll try again. But I think that it probably does,
Yeah.
because it makes us it makes the relationship with the plant, which sounds kind of weird, but it makes
Yeah, it does.
the attachment or the bond with the plant deeper.
Yeah.
Having
Mm.
said that, I want everyone to know that I buy plenty of mature plants,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't grow my vegetables from seed, and
Yeah.
some I used to, but it's okay not to too. I mean,
Right,
Yeah.
right. Absolutely.
that reminds me too of, like, when you go to the store maybe, and you go to the nursery, and you might see a plant that's like almost dead, and then you take it home and you nurse it back to life. That's extraordinarily satisfactory too, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Kind of the same concept where and that's part of that happiness, paradigm, where we want that relationship. We want that satisfaction of supporting another life, that fills
Yeah.
us up with a real pure kind of satisfaction,
Yeah.
and
And I got
really it's
to
about love. You're
Yeah.
loving the plant.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
And you
Yeah.
got to imagine though too, for those who might not feel they have the ability to start from something from seed, that if they, if they're at that level and they get a nice mature plant and they bring it home and they're caring for it and taking care of it. I suppose at that level of growing things, that's got to be just as satisfying though
Right.
too, being able
Right.
to just keep something going and keep it alive and do that sort of thing. So, I guess on different levels of what our experience is
Yes.
what we see in that. But again, I
Mm.
just thought that's so fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, well, thanks. Yeah. I mean, plants are our pets, right?
That's
And
right.
we,
They are.
you know,
They
we want
are.
them to succeed.
I
And
love the analogy because it really is
Yeah.
true, that we do care for them. And boy, oh boy, when like when I took my tomato plants out to harden them off this year, and I let them out in the sunshine just a little too long, and
Oh
they went
no.
frizzled up. My heart was breaking, and I'm like,
Right,
oh,
right.
and I'm
Yeah.
just dying
Yeah,
inside and
yeah, I
everything. So
know, I
that's all
know.
kind of a part of that, and then seeing them recover and come back in life and keep going again, and you're cheering them along. Yes, 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 yes.
Totally.
So
Yeah, totally.
just like the
Yeah,
ups and
Get
downs
totally.
of it
emotionally
all, we're
involved.
right there with them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything to add to that. You're right. It's spot on. I mean, that's what
Hmm.
plants do for us. They're like these little beings, these little green beings that we want
Yeah,
to
yeah,
succeed, in their own
that's,
way. So
that's
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So Karen, I have a question for you. I was happy actually to see that in your chapter on uniting, you chose the story of Ron Finley and organizing in LA, because to me, there's like, there's to find a solution to stress is great through plants, but it sort of potentially keeps people in a cycle of like stress at work, decompress at home with plants or with some activity, stress again, decompress, stress, decompress. And I think what the uniting chapter alluded to, and maybe you could talk a little bit more about it, is like, what kind of changes can we make together, especially being led by the gardeners, to change the world so that it actually is better, so that we actually do get back to, we improve our neighborhoods, we make them nicer places to be, we acknowledge that we're from nature, that we need that this gets worked into our policies at the citywide, countrywide level, that we're actually acknowledging this and making changes to permanently de-stress, if you will, people's lives. So just like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I haven't worked in government ever, but the first connection is the connection to your neighbors.
Yeah.
And in the book, I talk about my friend Raj, who he's like a busy guy. He's a helicopter pilot, and he has, time on, well, he works a corporate job, but he loves to garden, and he loves to work on his front garden. Yeah. And he has met, part of his big social time is that time of working on his front garden and people passing by or walking their dog and making connections with people just by doing that. Yeah. Like just by the simple act of working on a front yard. Another neighbor comes by, just chats you up. I live here, you live there. Oh, that's cool. Did you know, whatever, that this event is going on? You start to make connections, and you find like minds, and you find, gardeners who value the things that you value, or not even gardeners, or just people who value the things that you value. And then those things can be turned into activities. One of the things I have in my book is about a friend of mine who lives in a building where they have a beautiful courtyard garden in Chicago, and you can have plant exchanges in that building. You could have a planting party. You could just sort of have a gardening exchange or a house plant exchange, that type of thing. And those connections then can form into bigger things, like, hey, there's this vacant lot down the street and that's not doing anything. Why isn't it doing anything? And who owns that? And, why is there junk in there? And can we clean it up? And then that can go to, can we make it into a pea patch? And, before you know it, then maybe you would have a pea patch, and then you get to know even more neighbors. And then it's a real community thing. Like everybody says, change starts at the local level, right? So and when you are doing these projects together as neighbors or whatnot, people talk, right? And so if you can talk about whether, pest, I'm just thinking, like, you don't want to be preachy, but, it's really great to, know and, I don't know, just sort of gently, connect with people over, maybe we should do this in a natural way and not use pesticides, or, maybe we should, I don't know, build this thing so it's, made with, sustainably sourced materials, stuff like that. So, and then of course in your own yard, you can choose to pull your weeds and not spray them with Roundup. I mean, these are really easy things, right? And they're painful things because sometimes they're a little bit, you go the long road, right? Where you have to pull the weeds instead of just zapping them with Roundup or something like that. But we can do that. I mean, there was some report this year that the bee population, which was rapidly declining, is now bounced back a bit. And that's great news, right? And part of that is big agriculture. I know that. But just in our own backyards, we can not use pesticides or on our grass or herbicides and that type of thing and plant pollinators, plants that attract bees and butterflies and all that good stuff. So I think there's a lot you can do in your own backyard just by gardening organically, and then knowing your neighbors and trying to garden organically and make your neighborhoods a little bit better.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Does that answer the question?
Oh yeah, no, and I think you're right on the forming neighbor to neighbor relations is kind of the basis of any. You think about like somebody like Obama. What was he? He was a community organizer before he got into.
Right.
So it's like if you know the people, if you have a beer with them in your backyard, if you're comfortable knocking on their door asking for something, those are the people you can go to bat with later on for bigger change and more significant things.
Right. Another thing I should mention too is planting natives is always a good idea.
Yep.
If you don't know a lot about gardening, but you want to, have more than just grass or blackberry bramble, you can plant natives, and natives will really survive on their own. And you don't have to spend a lot of money, and you don't have to spend time watering or pruning or, dealing with diseases. Because if you plant natives, then they know the climate and they will thrive naturally. So that's another way too.
Yeah. Having a little bit of natives in every garden is a good idea. But again, too, just such a great book. All sorts of really awesome things in here. So full of some great, like we've talked about, some activities and just ways and finding perspective in our garden and really just de-stressing, relieving ourselves, as you would say, and all of that. So I think really, really, really awesome book. I want to thank you for coming here to share with that. I did, before we let you go though, I did want to kind of give you a chance to talk about a few other things before we go. This isn't you do have some fiction books that you've written before?
Yes, I do. And all of my fiction books are kind of centered around a speculative plant. So a plant that doesn't exist, but that might.
Interesting.
So let me see. I have this book. It's called The Forgetting Flower. And this book was kind of an outgrowth of when I did work in Paris. And it's about a woman who lives in Paris, and she kind of, but I wouldn't say gets stuck with, but sort of inherits a flower whose scent, if you smell it, it makes you forget the last thing you thought of. So your last memory. That then leads her into some trouble with some Russian mobsters and other people who have nefarious intentions for that plant and want to make money in a not so great way. And then she gets kind of tangled up with some problems. So it's sort of a slow burn thriller about a speculative plant. And then I did a follow-up called Harvesting the Sky, which was about an apple, and a medicinal apple that could boost your immune system in a very dramatic way. And what the guy who propagates it, the horticulturalist who grows the apples for a big corporation, goes through when there are mysterious forces that don't want him to succeed. So they're sort of thrillers, they're sort of mysteries. But they always have a plant at their center that is kind of speculative. Some people have called it magic, or you could see it as sort of light sci-fi, I guess. But it's rooted in the real world, and it's about horticulturalists or people who just grow plants. So
that's great, though.
That is fun. What an interesting offshoot there.
I know. I really like the idea of the forgetting plant one. We might have to have you come back and feature that sometime down the road too.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
I think that's
really
great.
Fun to write.
I think those are some great ideas too. And I just want to let everybody know who's watching too, if you are interested in any of these books, Leave Your Troubles Behind, or any of her fiction books we just mentioned too, I do have a link right down below to Karen Hugg's website there, where you can get a link directly to get to those books and find those books as well too. Also too, I just wanted to mention, you did write to me and let me know about some post or a article you wrote for the Washington Post
Mm.
recently, talking about simplifying your garden. You want to tell us a little bit more about
Okay.
that?
I do, because and this goes back to the whole topic of your garden mission and that type of thing, and
Mhm.
then spending a lot of money on plants.
Yeah.
So what I'm really into right now, my new passion, my new focus, and it's really an outgrowth of me getting older and having some arthritis in my hand and some knee issues, is the concept of a simple garden.
Mm.
And I have a big garden in my backyard, which I love, and it's great. And it's been great for the last, I don't know how long it's been, maybe 13, 15 years. But
Yeah.
and I've grown everything I want to grow, but I've really come to love the idea of decluttering and simplifying your life. And
Yeah.
I did a lot of decluttering. My husband and I did a lot of decluttering these past couple of years in our home, and it was like a huge just weight that was lifted off of us, and it felt so clear-headed and free. And I thought, how does this apply to the garden? How does this apply to my outdoor life? So I started thinking about that, and I started kind of taking a garden audit of my outdoor space. And I found a lot of stuff that I don't need. And so then I started getting rid of all that stuff. It started with my greenhouse, which had become like a shed and not a greenhouse anymore. And I cleaned that out, and then I caught a decluttering bug. And I got rid of like a bunch of old garden art, garden ornaments, old stuff in the garage, just old stuff in general, old pots, broken things, broken tools. So my new sort of thing is to simplify my life, simplify my garden, all in the name of capturing that peaceful feeling. And even if you're not a middle-aged person like I am, who has a lot of stuff, and you can still grow a simple garden from the get-go. And it involves, like you guys were saying, it involves a kind of not quite a mission statement, but understanding what is the purpose of my outdoor space, which I think you were talking about before. What am I going to do here? Am I going to simply enjoy this outdoor space? Am I going to grow vegetables? What am I doing? Do I have kids? Do I need a playground? And really taking it to some serious consideration before you start in on that. So now I'm developing like a new method, and it's based on the acronym SIMPLE, to simplify your garden. So that's kind of really what I'm into. Now it's funny because I started kind of writing an outline. This may become a new book.
That's what I was going to say. It's going to be a new book, right?
Well, and it's funny because I started writing about this neighbor I used to have in my 20s when I first started gardening. And, I could see her yard from my kitchen, and she would always like work on her garden every day, but she only did it for 15 minutes. And then she would go to work. She like had a job. I think she was like worked in the healthcare system or something. And she would come home, and she might do like a little bit more gardening. But then on the weekends, she would only buy plants to replace the plants that had died in her yard or for her containers. And on Sundays, she would sit outside in the early evening with a glass of wine and a book in an Adirondack chair that faced that beautiful, simple garden. And she would, enjoy it. And I just thought, oh boy, at the time, I just thought, oh boy, that's so boring. Like I was buying everything at the nursery. I'm growing tons of potted plants on my patio. I was just all like, well, I guess so. But that, like I was kind of dismissive. And now, now that I'm in my 50s and I kind of have come full circle. I feel like I have learned a lot from her, because she used to tell me, I just do a little bit every day. I just do a little bit every day, and that's it. And, she was a gardener, and she loved to garden, but she had it like under control. in this very
Yeah.
beautiful, simple, spiritual way
Yeah.
that now I kind of yearn for. And like you were talking about with going to the nursery and,
Yeah.
trying to hold back. So now I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about how to kind of keep it under control.
I think that's the
Use
key right
plants.
there.
Yeah.
Pardon?
I think that's the key,
I
what
mean,
you're talking about, keep it
I
under
know.
control. What you're actually
I
talking about right
know.
here are creating these limitations that us gardeners just, like you said, we see a seed catalog, a nursery, and we just going crazy. I want this, I want that.
yeah.
And so in the long run, what we're doing is,
Exactly.
in a
Yeah.
way,
And
kind of
so,
decluttering this thought process in a sense. No, I can't have this, and no, I can't have that, and let's keep it simple.
right. And so like the simple acronym, if I can do it from memory, is to first like streamline your garden, like
Mhm.
get out all the stuff that you really don't need, figure out, like you said, your mission for your
Yeah.
garden, or your purpose, and then identify all the things that you don't need in your garden, and then to maintain that, and to practice control. That's the P, is to
Yeah.
practice control. And the L, I think, is to limit your maintenance, to make
Mhm.
sure that you're not out there breaking your back and taking big things on. And the E is to enjoy, because
Yeah.
sometimes we, as gardeners, we work on it all the time and we just don't sit and enjoy the fruits of our labor. So, but maintaining control is a biggie. But like you said, if you have a mission for your garden, then you won't overspend, because it's like, is this like,
Yeah.
rare banana in my mission? No, so I'm not going to buy it, even though it's beautiful. So that's really what I'm into right now, is that idea of, and that was what my post article is about, that anyone can go and read. And it's also on my website. These concepts are on my website right now. I'm blogging about it right now.
Excellent.
Is the concept of, how can I make this manageable in my life so that it's not a giant, unwieldy thing. And I think that it's possible to have a simple garden and a beautiful garden. And that's what the post article was about, is like not sacrificing beauty and not sacrificing what you want, to have a simple garden. A simple garden doesn't have to be a bunch of like, arborvitaes and junipers, like, you see
Yeah.
outside the supermarket. It can be great, and it can be wonderful. And it's also about what you want too. I mean, if you want to grow the rare banana, that's fine. But, then you need to simplify in a different way. You have to really get in touch with what you want as a gardener, as a
Yeah.
person, what your outdoor space to be. And part of that too, for me, is using reliably good plants for your climate, and, right plant, right place kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because I know that I've spent lots of money growing things that are marginally hardy, and those things have died, or,
Yeah.
and then it's sort of like, okay, how many years am I going to do this? Like
Yeah.
I really
Exactly.
need to get down to brass tacks, and you have a honest talk with myself about how much I want to plant, and how much I want to maintain, and how much money I want to spend.
Yeah.
So that's really what I'm into
Yeah.
right now. That's my passion right now.
Strong doses of realism being distributed here.
I know,
Okay.
and I'm kind of going against the grain, because it's kind of like, well, when you buy plants, then it doesn't count, right? Decluttering doesn't count, right? And I used to think that for a long time too. So I'm kind of swimming maybe against a tidal wave. But
Yeah.
at least for me and my journey, where I'm at my life and my body,
Yeah.
this is what I need right now. So yeah.
Yeah, no,
And
that
then
makes sense on so many levels.
Yeah. You can take it back to natives too. Another way of simplifying your garden too. Just make something
Exactly.
that's going to take care of itself pretty much.
Right, exactly. Right, making it low maintenance, and, choosing
Yeah.
disease-free plants, or low, like disease-resistant plants, stuff
Exactly.
like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it would be the ultimate irony. One of the phrases you mentioned, or something akin to this, is that plants are these receivers of our stress because they demand so little from us. But the ultimate irony of gardening is that you ultimately work yourself up into a frenzy of stress because of your garden, and all
Yeah.
demanding plants. So I think we did. Yeah, you're trying to strike the balance here. I can see that we don't want to get so worked up as gardeners that we don't we're not we're adding to our troubles instead of leaving them behind.
Exactly. Exactly. Well put. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
Right on, right on. Excellent. Well, I again too want to mention to everybody again what this month's book is Leave Your Troubles Behind. We've been talking with Karen Hugg here all about this really awesome book. And if you want to get a copy
Yeah,
of
great.
or any of the other books that we just mentioned too, again, link right down below in the description for Karen Hugg's website, where you can also go and catch that Washington Post article about simplifying your garden too. So definitely go check all of that out as well. And again, Karen, thank you so much for spending your time today to come on the Let's Get Growing show and talk all about your book again.
Well, thank you guys. It's talking about gratitude. I'm so grateful for you guys and what you guys do. I mean, I think it's so fun, and it's a great place for me to be on a Sunday morning, is hanging out with you guys and talking plants. So thanks so much.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thanks for spending the time, and also thanks for all the hard work in the book. I mean, those are all the solitary hours, but you really brought things in an accessible format. You gave words to a lot of great insights, and I know lots of people are going to benefit from that, including me. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
definitely. Again, just full of great activities. If you're, it's good ways to get you started in finding some of that relief you need in your life, in your garden space, and all of that. And again, like Marc says, just full of great research, lots of great things to think about, and and like I said, just really great stuff. And again, too, also I'll mention you got a really great. I mentioned it in tease maybe just a little bit here too, but you got a great little appendix in the back that has all sorts of little additional things, websites, books, plant apps, all of that sort of stuff. And maybe in your next book, in your appendix, we'll get the urban gardener under one of your favorite YouTube channels.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
That's all right. I could definitely understand why epic gardening is in here for sure. But we've got favorite podcasts, all of that great stuff in there. So much great research.
I didn't know about you guys in 2020. Did you exist in 2020?
I know, exactly. Right on. Right on.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much, Karen.
Thanks, Karen. Great to meet you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it so much. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're definitely going to have to find a way to get you back on for a third time sometime too, as well, down the road.
No problem.
Sure. Excellent.
I love talking plants. So
plants.
anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, Karen.
Okay. Bye.
All right, Marc. Woo. How about that, huh?
Oh man, that was just a great we have been blessed. Talk about gratitude, man. We have had. It's like we're hitting it out of the park with these book selections. The authors. Not only are the books great, the authors are great. They're not like dusty old people sitting up in an attic somewhere cranking out a book, but they are just like real awesome living human beings. And Karen Hugg was just another one who was just giving it to us straight and with so much insight and humor and wisdom.
Yeah, it's like we say, on our other book clubs and all of that coming and hanging out with us on this Sunday book club isn't like your regular book club where you're hanging out with your friends in the living room and just chatting about what you read in the book and all of that. Here we're actually getting to have the authors with us right here for the club and to talk all about what they're doing and get to know them.
I think this book could, I just want to impress on the listeners and anybody who's watching the replay. This book could really help change your life because it really does speak to the kind of stress, the panic, the frantic mode that we're all living under. And it really gives you some clear-headed insights into the way out, using plants as your allies, using natural spaces as our way to go. So, there's like, some of the other books have been really wonderful and great and full of insight, but this one has some real impact for people's health and well-being. So I really encourage people to get this book and read it.
Yeah, definitely. like I said, it's full of great research, such wonderful stuff. And again, I'm sure it'll speak to a lot of us out there because, like you mentioned, Mark, we all live, we just live, it's a modern world, man. It's a busy, bustling world out there with so much going on. And, you know, we need to find ways to kind of, uh, de-stress from all of that, and nature and plants in the garden is just such a wonderful way. As I mentioned too earlier, you know, I kind of came about some of this just kind of through life and seeing how those things were a part of my own experience, and then getting to read this book was kind of reflective of some of that same stuff that I
Yep.
was
Yep.
going through, and how I found myself so passionate about plants, so, you know, just, you know, really enthusiastic about growing and doing all of this sort of stuff. And again, just another really, really great book.
Great book. But we've
Absolutely.
so Enoch, we've probably exhausted all the good books, and we probably don't have any more good books for next month, do we? It's probably like
Wait. I dare to say that this
wait a second.
this is one of the reasons why we started the gardening book club, and we thought about this idea again too, because for one, we're both readers, we love books. I mean,
Totally.
right behind me there's a ton of books. That's a big old bookshelf full of books there, and there's just so many great gardening books out there. You know, from whether or not we're talking about a great book that's, you know, giving us insights into, you know, our daily lives and how plants can be a part of that as well, to, you know, as you know, Karen's even written some fictional books, but we had Christy on just to talk about, you know, garden variety, of, you know, fictional book in the gardening world, or instructional gardening books. There's all sorts of different types of books in the gardening world, and so many more for us to explore out there. So 5 in, I don't think we're even close to touching.
We're not close.
We're not even close to touching it at all. So that's where we're at now too. One of the great things about joining with our monthly book club here live on the show is that you get to see what our next selection is. And we're now going to announce and get into what is going to be our next selection for the September book club. And what I want to do is let everybody know now, as we get to talking about this, that you can jump into the chat right now, and all you got to do is put in hashtag book club if you're in the US. Now, here's the thing though. There's a caveat. If you are outside of the US and you want to pay for shipping and take care of shipping, we will send you a copy of the book. But for anybody in the US, we'll ship it out to you and get you a free copy of our September selection of the monthly book club here. And just put into the comments hashtag book club, and then we'll draw one here in just a minute. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about in September, and I thought this was kind of a great way, and I don't want to get and we talk about, and this is a whole nother subject I talk about on other shows and stuff, common ground gardening and all of that. This is a political time in the United States. We're in an election cycle, all this stuff is going on and all of that too. And I kind of thought we'd get something that's kind of themed a little bit, but doesn't kind of take us into what's going on today. You know what I mean? And so we can kind of leave that where it's at and let that be where it's at. And then we can take a moment to kind of explore gardening in our history and what it has to do with our American history. And we've chosen the book. It's called All the President's Gardens by Marta McDowell. And so what we're going to do in the month of September is read all about the different White House gardens throughout history and learn about all of those sort of things that they've been doing on the White House grounds. And there's just tons and tons of them. It's Madison's cabbages to Kennedy's roses, how the White House grounds have grown with America. And so next month, on the third Sunday of the month, we'll have joining with us Marta McDowell to talk all about this just great book. I mean, I've thumbed through it. I haven't necessarily had a chance to get in and really read it yet. So I'm really excited about getting right into this and reading it and everything. But I've thumbed through it, and I'm a major history fan. I love especially like American history and stuff like that. So I just know that there's gonna be so much in this book that I'm just really excited
Enoch,
about.
let me just show like some pages here. One of the things I love about this book, besides being incredibly well researched and beautifully written, is it has so many interesting historical photographs. Like I haven't really read it yet either, but I was paging through and I learned that the White House had a huge greenhouse sticking off one of the wings at one point. So
Oh
it's like,
yeah.
this is crazy, you know? So it's just, you know, and just the way the White House grounds have changed reflect American attitudes to
Hmm.
gardening, what was popular, what's important. And I think it's going to be just a wonderful way to slice history. You know, there's so many ways you can approach history, but when you can approach it through a gardening lens and a historical lens, I think it's going to be really, I guess, approach history through a historical lens is a contradiction. But when you can approach it through a gardening lens, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, maybe I better
exactly. It's
shut up. Now back to Enoch.
it's but no, I'm really, yeah, exactly. I just it's going to be really fascinating to kind of learn about that, you know, and learn about those changing things that have happened on the White House grounds as they've changed from president to president, administration to administration over the years, and
Mhm.
each one of them are bringing newer and different ideas to different things and doing
Yeah.
different things in those spaces. I don't know if it's touched on in here too. Again, I haven't read it yet, but I know there was a article I read in the last couple of years, though, talking about one of the trees on the White House grounds that they've actually had to like take out. That's
Mm.
been growing. So I think like Thomas Jefferson put it in on the White House grounds, and it's been growing all those years, but finally came to the point where they had to take it out too. So I can't imagine having to do that or having to
Wow.
make that call. Could you imagine being the gardener to have to make that call,
Yeah.
Mark?
Right. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry, but we got to take out Thomas Jefferson's tree.
I mean, it's hard to take out even a tree. Like I got this cherry tree we planted for I think my son's baptism or something. You know,
Right.
tell if anybody out there wants to commemorate a child's event with a tree, I don't recommend doing it with a cherry tree because
Right.
one, I think at the time I wasn't, this is, you know, decades ago, I wasn't that great of a gardener. I was just sort of starting out in my journey. I didn't really realize what the meaning of semi-dwarf is, you know, it's still
Right.
pretty big.
Yeah.
and so basically that means like the crows get most of the cherries, but cherry trees sucker like crazy. And this thing has put out suckers everywhere in the garden and it steals all the water from my garden. It's just like, oh my God, that was a bad
Uh,
idea. So, but because it's not,
probably needed a different space, huh?
no, but here to the historical point, you know, even if you hate the tree and you curse it every day, it's like, but it's my son's tree. We planted it for that and for that special occasion. So am I going to take that tree out ever? No. And you know, same thing with Thomas Jefferson. It's just like I'm not going to take out the Thomas Jefferson tree, even if it, you know, doesn't fit in with the new landscaping or whatever. So those are hard decisions.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I believe this was like disease or something. It was just the plant was going to die or the tree was
Yeah.
going to
Okay.
die anyway, so they had to make that kind of decision at that point and stuff. But yeah, that's pretty crazy though when you think about that sort of stuff and those kind of transitions, you know. What do we keep? You know, like those new presidents got to think like, okay, well, what do
Yeah.
we keep from what they
Right.
had, you know, because something's got to be left behind and then what do we add and all of that sort of stuff. But again, just going to be a really great, fascinating book. Again, all the president's gardens,
Mm.
you know, how the White House grounds have grown with America. So this is going to be a really wonderful book. Again, to if you want to get a copy or win a copy right now, put in hashtag book club. I'll give you just another minute for everybody to get that done, and we'll do a drawing here real quick and get a book out to somebody here. And again, too, just again, another really great book. I can't wait to talk to Marta McDowell because, like I said, that's one of the cool things about the book club is that we get to talk to the actual authors and get to meet them and learn just a little bit more about what went into these great books.
Yeah, and you know, I was just thinking about reading this book club. Think about how many boxes we check off on Karen Hugh's happiness index. You know, we're learning, we're uniting with each other and with a whole community of people who like to learn about gardening. We're checking that off. We are. What's another one there? Now that I'm trying to say this, we're not exercising too much because we're just kind of sitting down turning pages. But at least I know for myself, being an active gardener, I actually like a reason to sit down on a weekend day or an evening and just not do anything and read a book. So the book
Mm-hmm.
club, maybe non-exercise is actually healthy too, just like exercises.
That's
Because
right.
those of us who are always constantly abusing our bodies out of doors, like the actual need to sit down and not do anything is actually good for the body for a while.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
we're checking a lot of boxes on the happiness index here, is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Let's get to giving away a copy of this book here.
All right.
Real
Do it.
quick, if you didn't get a chance yet, you got only a second here to put in hashtag book club. So let's bring in our little drawing tool here. And again, we're putting in hashtag book club. I'm going to start collecting comments now. And then, all right, let's see here. We got some draw entries. Let's draw. Who's going to win our new All the President's Garden book? Oh, looks like Serena. Look like she's won the book.
Yeah.
Awesome. And again, too, for the winner of our book club, all we need you to do is send us an email to letsgetgrowing.live. Or no, that's the website. I'm sorry. I'm putting the wrong one up. Let's get growing at mail.com, not gmail.com, but at mail.com. So send us an email there, and we'll get all of your specifics to send out this book. Again, too, great congratulations to Serena for being our book club winner. And I hope you enjoy our book. All right, let's see here. Okay, well, I guess that does it again for another book club here, Mark. Awesome, huh?
I'm so glad. I really am grateful for this selection. There's a lot of things I'm just about to go back into an academic year, working with kids. I got some great ideas from this book, but just some great life ideas too, so grateful for that, and looking forward to the new thing, and just grateful to be on this journey together, man. This is a great journey to be on, this garden book monthly book club.
Yeah, excellent. Yep. Again, too. Yep. Be sure to check the comments below for your copy of Leave Your Troubles Behind. You can get at Karen Hugg's website right below, KarenHugg.com. You can find her other books, and then as well, too, go out and grab yourself a copy. I know they got them available on Amazon and all of that. All the President's Gardens. And again, too, you don't have to get the book either, but come and join with us again next month in September. And again, I want to make sure I get the date correct here, though, too. This is the third Sunday of the month, which will be the 15th of September.
Yeah.
So the 15th of September, we'll get back together again right here on the Let's Get Growing show and talk all about that great book.
And Enoch, great point. If somebody hasn't read the book, just join the conversation, because you may just want to go and read the book afterwards, after you hear the author and after you hear the conversation. So
absolutely,
it's kind of a no pressure, no stress invitation. Don't worry. If you don't have time, just come for the conversation, and then maybe you want to pick up the book after.
Exactly. Yep. No need for the book to begin with, but it's a good idea to read along with us as well, too. Just a little bit different style of a book club where we're just getting together and talking about some really wonderful books in the gardening world, and getting a chance to catch up with those authors and talk with them as well, too. So you don't want to miss out on that. September 15th, third Sunday of the month, for our next selection of the monthly gardening book club. And again, Mark, thank you so much for being my co-host for this wonderful adventure. And we'll see you again next Sunday.
Enoch, all I can say after this amazing episode is the immortal words of Cisco Morris. Oh la la.
I know. What a great one last month too, as well, too. You want to go check that out if you haven't already, but definitely another great edition of the Let's Get Growing book club. So again, thanks, Mark, for being my co-host on this great adventure.
I'll stay on. We'll chat after.
You got it. Awesome, everybody. Like I said, what a great great show. This has just been an awesome edition of our Let's Get Growing monthly gardening book club, getting the chance to co-host it with my good friend Marc Boucher-Colbert, our contributor for the In the Garden segment here on the Sunday edition of the Let's Get Growing show, and to get to talk with Karen Hugg. Really just awesome day today. I hope that you all get out and check out our new book, the All the President's Gardens by Marta McDowell, and come join with us next September 15th, third Sunday of the month, for the monthly gardening book club. And also too, I do want to mention that we did last week on Sunday edition, we talked with Gardener Scott. Gardener Scott joins with us on the second Sunday of the month. He's Master Gardener and at the gardening channel on YouTube, Gardener Scott channel, and he joins with us on the second Sunday of each month to answer your gardening questions. So if you do have any gardening questions, I do like to mention here on the Sunday edition that Gardener Scott does his live stream tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on his channel, the Gardener Scott channel. So if you have any specific gardening questions at all that you didn't get answered or would like to have answered, you can go join him and check him out there at the Gardener Scott channel tomorrow morning to get some gardening questions answered as well too. And again, I mentioned at the beginning of the show that we had a big power outage yesterday. We didn't get to do the show yesterday, and we were going to have our good friend John Kohler from Growing Your Greens on with us to talk about his garden and what he's got growing on right now. And we're just gonna have to postpone that conversation for next week, and we'll catch up with that as well too. So if you missed our show yesterday, we just weren't here at all because we had a power outage and weren't able to do the show. So definitely check that out. Or if you want to check out last week's show too, last Saturday on the show we had with us Greg Peterson from the Urban Farm. He has a great podcast, the Urban Farm Podcast, and he joined with us again. He was our third time guest here on the Let's Get Growing show, and great conversation with Greg Peterson. And also on that show, we had Bowtie David from Bowtie Life in the Garden on our Are You Following Me segment. And David is one of our regular viewers here on the show. You might see him in our chat each week here, so it's great to catch up with him on our Are You Following Me segment. So go back and check out some of those past shows, and as well, come and join with us next week on the Sunday edition of the show as well too. We will be joining again. I've invited back on the show my good friends Kang Star from the Kang Star channel down in Texas, and my good friend Christopher Bransdahl from MTN Gardens up in Norway. And these two, we talk all the time. They've been joining with me on live streams for years, so it's always great to catch up with them and have a fun conversation throughout the gardening season. So they'll be joining with us next Sunday for our gardening roundtable. So I hope that you all join with us then. And real quick, before you leave, click that like button real quick and hit subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Hit the bell for notifications so you can be notified of upcoming videos and live streams, as well as share with all of your friends. Definitely share with all your friends. And definitely also check out IV Organics. They are our sponsor for the show here. Check out IV Organics at ivorganics.com. Check out their 3-in-1 plant guard. I think this is really the necessity for every gardener out there. You should have this in your garden shed. The 3-in-1 plant guard is really awesome. Go and check that out at ivorganics.com. Use our promo code GROW10, GROW10, to save 10% off. And be sure to follow all of our links in the description below to our guests, Karen Hugg's website, to Marc Boucher-Colbert's Design Your Eden card deck that we talked about earlier too. All sorts of great links down in the description below. So be sure to go and check all of those out. And man, what a great show today. So awesome. And I'm really, really glad to have all of you join along with us here today as well, too. So thank you all for joining with us here on the show. And I'll see all of you next weekend. Remember, same time, same place, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Urban Gardener channel. We'll see you then.